Okay, I found him. I guess this is why in the theater we have a run through, and then we have another run through, and then we have a final room run, and then we have a tech, and then we have a piano tech, and then we have an orchestra dress, and then Anyway, I'm so glad to have Larry here on the show with us. How you doing?
I am doing well. Now that we're connected, I'm doing well.
I know. And I learned today that not all parts of Florida are in the Eastern time zone. There are some small areas where Larry lives that are in the Central time zone. So I'm glad that we actually were able to make this work. This is good. This is good.
I have to make people aware. I always say that I'm on Central Standard Time, and people think I'm the opposite corner from Miami, so I'm northwest and not southeast. And so we are very close to Alabama, and it is on Central Standard Time. So
it makes sense. It completely makes sense. I just completely had no idea what I was doing, and so therefore, I never claimed to really know too much about anything. But what I do know is that I guess this would have been the spring of '99. I came up to a well-known institution of music, the Indiana University School of Music back then, before it was the Jacob School of Music, to audition because I had heard what an amazing program this school was. And as part of our weekend of auditions, they were offering, you could come see the opera that night. Oh, what opera are they doing? Oh, we're doing La Cenerentola. I thought, okay, cool. I've never seen this opera. I'll go see it. Well, little did I know that, first of all, when the curtain went up, the set looked like it was straight from the Met. I'm not sure if this was one of Robert O'Hearn's past productions that had actually been at the Met. That's one of the most amazing things about Indiana is that not only do they get great singers, but the technical design and the stagehands and the theater itself and everything about that place is just so top notch. And Robert O'Hearn for years designed shows at the Met that when they were retired, I guess Indiana University bought them and were able to use them. So anyway, the curtain goes up. I'm sitting there in my seat from middle of nowhere, Texas, having done my undergrad at a small private liberal arts university. I look at the stage and I'm like, oh, wow, this is like the big leagues. Okay. And then the cast that evening was Katie Lang was Cenerentola.
Yeah.
You, Lawrence Brownlee, were Ramiro. A little known bass baritone Kyle Kettleson was Don Magnifico. I think Dondini was. I can't. Do you remember who the Dondini was?
I think it was either David Meyer or was it David Meyer?
I think it was David Meyer. That was who I thought. That was who I was trying to remember. But I think it was him. Yeah. Anyway, I literally didn't understand what I was watching. I was like, this is better than anything I've ever seen before. And so it was incredible. And then I was there staying with a good friend of mine who I'd gone to undergraduate with, Jeff Monette. And he was like, well, hey, there's like a cast party thing if you want to go and hang out and meet everybody. I was like, yeah, that'd be fun. So we went over to the house. And when we walked in, I remember, a few people were standing around, oh, hey, how you doing? And I look over into the living room and there was a guy laying on the carpet kind of next to the stereo, and you're kind of messing with stuff, and you were listening to, like, I think it was pop music, and you were doing this thing where you were like holding your ear and you were like, like you couldn't quite make out what notes were being sung or how to quite access. And I was like, who's that? And Jeff goes, oh, that's Larry. Don't worry. He's actually a really good singer. He was the guy that sang Ramiro. And I was like, oh. So that was my introduction to Larry, was being blown away by your performance on stage and being completely cracked up once I got to meet you in person. So yeah, that was pretty hysterical.
That sounds like something I would do.
Yeah, yeah, no, I've experienced it on a number of occasions.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
tell us a little bit about how you first got into singing. I know I've seen videos of you playing the bass and singing some amazing gospel stuff. So did you get started in the church, or how did you get started singing?
I did get started in the church, and I'm one of six kids. My dad was the church choir director. My mother sang solos, and they were very involved in music. We had a very active music department in church. And early along, I actually played instruments. And I know maybe you can see in the back, I have a
Maybe
couple of my instruments.
you have a full band.
Right. I have my ukulele and my kazoo over there. But
Oh, good.
no. So I just came from a tradition of music in the house, and even if you went to my house today, somebody would be singing. My mom would be singing as she made, you know, pies and cakes and stuff like that. So it was just a part of my upbringing and my culture. And I was involved all the way through church, then into elementary school, to middle school, and even to high school. Very involved music programs, and I know you coming from the state of Texas, high school music is so huge. State competition, choir, and everything. It's a tremendous institution, and I know people who,
Yeah.
incredible teachers who teach high school at that level, and they have a long legacy of churning out incredibly gifted singers, very talented people, because that's a real investment in the students they have in Texas. But where I came from, Youngstown, Ohio, they also did a bunch of that as well. And so I got a chance to hone my musical craft at an early age, being involved in show choir all throughout high school, getting the chance to go out of the United States when I was 15 years old. I got a chance to go to France, Germany, and
On
Spain
like a
when I
choir
was like
tour.
15 on like a show choir
Oh,
tour.
cool.
And so we got a chance to do a bunch of stuff. And so my mind was opened up to the world of music very, very early on. But it wasn't until later, until I got into undergrad, that I decided I would try to pursue, a career in music, because I thought I was going to be a lawyer.
Oh, there you go. So
Hmm.
what was it that was the turning point that took you away from the law and took you
Hmm.
towards a path of uncertainty when it comes to I don't know, everything?
Well, there was a teacher that approached me. I was involved in a music program for gifted music students in high school. And so at the end of this program, whatever your discipline was, you got a chance to study at the university with someone in that same respective discipline. So I was a singer at that time. And a lot of people don't know this, but I was an instrumentalist way more than a singer in the beginning. Then later on in high school, I guess it was, that I began to, my voice started to bring me out of my shell, and people would notice me for my voice.
Yeah.
And so that was the thing I was using. And I was a senior in high school. A school called Youngstown State University had this program called Upward Link, and that Upward Link had a program for like 8 weeks. And so I was taking lessons like once a week at the university, and I was taking voice lessons. So at the end of this, there was a recital with all, the various disciplines. And so I came to this recital and I sang a piece, and after I got done, there was like a standing ovation. And I was like, hmm. And this was the first time I'd ever taken any classical voice lessons, and I really didn't know what I was doing. This guy named Mike Reed, that was his name, and I don't even know where he is today.
Huh.
Mike Reed gave me a few lessons, and not that he was a particularly, no offense to him, great singer. He just was someone who was taking voice at that, time.
And teaching
So
in
I
that
did this
linked up
and
program.
teaching in that Upward Link program,
Upper
and
link.
so I had to do this. Again, I said I did this final concert, and so after I had a standing ovation, there was a gentleman who approached my father and I. My father came with me, and he said, "Who are you? Where are you from? I mean, oh my gosh, what an amazing talent you have. What are you going to do with it?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know." He
Be
was
a
like, "You
lawyer.
have to come here. Yeah, be a lawyer." He was like, "You have to come here. You have to study with me. You really just have to do that." And I was like, okay. And I wasn't exactly sure at that point where I was going to go to school. And then I decided, okay, this guy's interested in me. I can go to school undecided. I'm thinking I'm going to be a lawyer. And I was like, at least take some music lessons on the side. And so that's what I was
Well, so
doing.
was that was at Youngstown State?
That was at Youngstown State University. That was before I got into college. So I was a senior in high school. And then
Oh, so
so
then
I was in high school. Then I decided that next year I would enroll in Youngstown State in my hometown. and I would be involved. I would be his voice student, but be general studies. And so I did that. And so that first semester, we did a Nats competition, and I entered in freshman men. And so when I did this, I sang a piece called Der Jüngling an der Quelle by Schubert. So I
Okay.
did this piece, not really knowing, just kind of Liza, Lisa, der Quelle, whatever, just singing. And so I'm
Right.
like mocking more or less what I thought an opera singer sounded like. And then after I finished this, in the preliminaries, all the teachers are like, "Oh my gosh!" So I made it to the finals, and I sang it again on stage in the finals because that how the way they did it in Nats, you did the preliminaries and did the final, then they decided who the winner was. And so after
Right.
I did the finals, there was like a standing ovation because I was in front of everybody, and then I won that again. And so I was like, maybe there is something to this voice thing for me.
So
We'll
far,
see.
you're 2 for 2 for standing ovations for public performance.
It was weird because I was like, what the heck? I mean, are people
This
just
is what
tired?
happens.
Are they just tired of sitting down? Maybe they just want to stand. Or like you go to
Sure.
some of these churches, they stand up all the time when you sing. So I was like, maybe
There you
that's what's
go.
happening. Carrie Ann Matheson, hey, my dear.
Hi,
Hi,
Carrie Ann.
All school trips.
So,
There you go.
so at this point, senior year in the program, and then going into Youngstown State as a freshman and participating in Nats, was it clear at this point that you were a tenor, and within that voice category, any specific type of tenor, or were you still sort of exploring, what your range was, or was it just sort of clear?
No, it wasn't. I didn't know what type of tenor I was. I knew that I was a tenor, and I always had a high voice. Again, as I said before, coming from a musical family, I had three sisters that were older than me, and they all sang. And so even when we would sing together as a group, I would sing higher than them because I guess my voice hadn't changed then, yet.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I always had this natural ability to sing high. That was just something that I guess I was blessed with, if you want to call it that.
Sure.
So I remember taking lessons with the gentleman who approached me at that competition, who ended up being my first voice teacher. His name was David Starkey, and David
Okay.
Starkey was also there's a David Starkey Sr. and a David Starkey Jr. And the David Starkey Jr. is now the general director of Indianapolis Opera. But his
Oh,
dad had been a singer in Germany, and then he was teaching at Youngstown State. And so he was like, "You're a tenor. I'm a tenor. I know what a tenor sounds like, and you have this unique ability to sing high. It's a gift that you have, and a lot of people would kill to have the voice you have. So you have to pursue it." So he was the one who told me that I was a tenor. I knew I had the high voice, but I didn't know at that point that what specific type of tenor was. That came a little bit later
sure.
at another Nats competition a couple years later.
So throughout your undergraduate career and working with him, um, you know, did you find a passion at that point that you wanted to pursue it as a career yet? Or was this still like, well, 50-50 lawyer, maybe music, maybe?
No, so what happened is I only studied with him for 1 year.
Oh,
So when I spoke of that show choir earlier, my two best friends, they were a year younger than I was. And so I was like involved with them because I was still in my hometown, and actually they traveled a bit. And so since I was a college student, had a fair amount of flexibility. One guy was in the ensemble, the show choir, and he couldn't go to a European trip. So I was even a college student. I got a chance to travel with them. And these were like my best friends. And also my sister, a sister that's a year younger than me, she was also in the group. And so we all went and hung out all the time. They were just, 1 year younger than me.
sure.
And then they were graduating that next year, and they were like, "We're leaving Youngstown and we're going to a different school than Youngstown State. We're not staying here." And I said to them, "Well, you're not leaving me." So I transferred from Youngstown State, and we all ended up in a school called Anderson University in Anderson, Indiana. And that school is well known because it's a school that is really big in contemporary Christian music, like Sandy Patty, the
Okay,
Gaithers, all those
sure.
people, and they all were from that school. And so I went there, and it's funny because I went there because I wouldn't have them leave me. After one semester, one of them left, and after the second one, another one left, and I was the only one that stayed there. And so I ended up having a teacher by the name of Fritz Robertson that I studied with him for the next 4 years, and he's the one who really lined me up for my voice, and it was under his tutelage that I began to understand what type of tenor I was.
Okay. So what are some of the things during that period of time that you were struggling with? I mean, you talk about this sort of natural innate ability that you had to sing high and that you'd been doing it for a long time. I'm sure that when you got into formal lessons and specifically with your time at Anderson, what were some of the things that you had to kind of work through and figure out that were going to be more applicable, for operatic singing or just for classical singing in general, but for the stage?
Well, I have to tell this story too. When I was singing, when I was taking voice lessons with him, I didn't really know what type of tenor I was.
Hmm.
And I remember doing a competition my first year with him. I was a sophomore, but essentially a freshman, but I was in sophomore
Right.
men. And we did a competition that was Nats. And so I went to Nats and I had already had success. You said before, two standing ovations. Not that I was cocky because I wasn't at all. I wasn't at all. But I
I'm
was
sure
used
you're
to like doing well. And so we go to this next Nats competition and I make it to the finals and it's me and two other guys. And so in the finals, we all sing and I end up getting third place. And I was like, that stung a little bit. I was like,
hmm
okay. So I go back and I said to him, I said, I want to know the song now because next year I'm going to go and beat those guys next year. And
Sure.
so I come back the next week with Que Jelly de Manina, La Boheme. And
Sure.
so he was like, it's interesting about him too, because he was a guy that he had his voice essentially ruined by a teacher. And so he really learned how to use his voice again. I mean, he had a situation that was just like he went down a bad path with his voice and he said, I'm going to make sure I take care of this kid's voice because he has something special. So he
Right.
treated me with white gloves, I guess you can say. But he told me that since I was so excited about singing and wanted to sing the next year, he didn't harm me in any way. And he let me sing the Que La Manina. So we got it
Hmm.
worked up. And I remember being on the bus going back to this competition and saying to myself, those two guys, you know, I want to beat them this year. But
Right.
as we pulled up, what's up, Lemmy, Michael
Hey,
Bencher?
Lemmy. Hey,
Yeah.
Michael.
As we pulled up, it was at the University of Michigan because it was the regional competition, and I was going
Oh,
to school
sure.
in Indiana, but it was in
Right.
Michigan. So as we pulled up, I remember saying to myself, I hope those guys aren't here this year.
That they're not there.
Yeah. And the first person I see when I open the door is the guy who won last year. His name was
Uh-oh.
Omari. I was like, crap, they are here, both of them. And
Right.
so it turned out again, we all three of us ended up in the finals.
Yeah.
And then it turned out this year that I won first place. And
Standing ovation?
well, it's funny because I don't know if it was a standing ovation, but I won first place. And then they gave the award for sophomore men or whatever it was, junior men. It was junior men at that time.
Junior, yeah.
And then this was the first year that they ever gave an award for the overall award for all the singers. And I was sitting in the audience. They were like, "We have an overall award for this year that we're instituting for the first time, and that winner is Larry Brownlee." And I was like, "What?" So I won the overall award for all the singers that year. And then it was at that competition that there was a lady who was a judge of me in the preliminary round. She said to me afterwards, she said, I want to talk to you for a minute. And I went over to her. She said, who's your teacher? I said, his name is Fritz Robertson. And she said, bring him over here. So I called him over because he was across the room. And she said, you have an amazing talent in this kid. You absolutely have something special, but you have to know that this is not the right repertoire for him. You need to find what's the right repertoire. And he said to her, I know, but he was so excited. He wanted to do it. We're going to go back. And so we go back. We have a long bus ride back to school. And I'm thinking very high, very happy and high off the fact
Oh,
that I
sure. Yeah,
won.
yeah, yeah.
And then I get back to school that next Monday. He was like, I want you to sing this. And it was The Barber of Seville. So I go and I'm like, I don't want to sing The Barber of Seville. I want to sing Bohème and all this other stuff. Because at that time, I really didn't know what type of voice I had. But I
Right.
bring back The Barber of Seville a week or a week and a half, 2 weeks later, and I sing through it. And I sing it with such an apparent ease in his mind that he stops me after like the first two phrases. He was like, sing that again. He was like, this is what you were born to sing.
Hmm.
This is the exact music that you were born to sing. And that was the beginning of my relationship with bel canto music, and then in
And
working
this is
with
your
him,
junior year in undergrad?
this is my junior year in undergrad. My
My
junior year
gosh.
in undergrad, and then it was just kind of one of those things. It was like you have the ability, and now you have to learn how to sing that tessitura and the coloratura, all of that stuff efficiently. But this is what your voice is meant to do.
So you had one more year with him
I had
before you went on to.
I had 4 years total, so it was officially my sophomore year, but it was my junior year of college. So I was an undergrad for 5 years actually, because I
Okay.
had the one year
Okay.
at Youngstown State, and then I had the 4 years at Anderson.
Sure, sure. So you had 3 more years once you had discovered that this was your real category, your
Mhm.
Fach,
Yeah.
and working with him into that repertoire. And then did you do any type of young artist training programs or anything while you were at Anderson?
No, none.
So you
Not
just
right.
went from Anderson and then you went to graduate school at
Mhm.
Indiana University in
Yes.
Bloomington. Okay. So what led to that decision?
Well, it's funny. I ended up at Indiana because I wanted to audition for three schools. And those three schools were Boston, which is where my teacher had gone, Manhattan School of Music, and Juilliard. So, Juilliard, you had to send in a tape in order to be invited for an audition. So, at that time, I was seeing a girl that was also auditioning to go to Juilliard. It was three of us. We actually took a car and went to the East Coast. And so before that, we had to get our times to see when we would be invited for an audition. And so
Right.
she told me that she got her audition time. And I was like, man, I wonder maybe the mail's, held up or something like that. And I don't know what's happening. I called Juilliard and they're like, no, we're not inviting you for an audition. I was like, okay, guess I'm not auditioning for Juilliard. And I told my teacher, I had told him I want to sing for three schools.
Yeah.
So we still had Boston, Manhattan. I said I want to sing for a third school. I searched and searched and searched, and the only school that still had an audition date was Indiana University. And he had steered me away from Indiana because Indiana's considered the factory. He was like,
Right.
I don't want you
Too
to,
big.
yeah, get lost in the big pond over there. And so he was like, I don't want you to go to IU. Then I said, well, look, just because it has a date, it'll be my third school because it's important for me to have three
Three
schools.
choices.
And so
Sure.
I went to Indiana, I went to Boston and Manhattan School of Music, and they both offered me full scholarships. But I went to IU, and the minute I stepped on that campus, I fell in love with IU, and I was like, "This is where I'm supposed to be." So that's how I ended up at IU.
Yeah. It's not ugly. And it's a gorgeous campus.
Not at
Yeah,
all.
amazing facilities. So at IU,
Hmm.
your voice teacher was Connie Kukuro.
Not at the
Was that
beginning.
not at the beginning? Okay, that was my next question.
Hmm.
So who did you initially begin study with?
So the way I found my teacher, her name was Virginia Botkin. So
Oh,
I studied
sure,
with
I know that.
Virginia Botkin, and I think she would have left before you got there, actually.
She
She
did, but
came in
she's from
99.
Texas. Yeah.
North Texas, exactly. And she had a tremendous legacy. And so the way I even found out about her, a couple summers from when I was at Anderson, I was working at this place. It was a camp called Maranatha Bible Camp, and I was there as a summer singer. They
Hmm.
had, like I guess you would call it a praise team or something like
Sure.
that. But I was a member of the quartet for 2 summers. And so one of the guys, hi Stephanie Weiss, uh, Weiss or Weiss. I know you lived in Germany for a long time, so we say Weiss.
Yeah, right.
Stephanie Weiss. And so
Stephanie.
when I was talking to him, he's a guy from Texas, and it's interestingly enough, we're talking about high school music. This is a guy from Fort Worth area named Robert Adams. Robert Adams knew I was going to IU that next year, and he said, "Oh, you should look up this teacher. Her name is Virginia Botkin. Just look her up." Not even saying I should study with her, but when I first got there, I was looking for who Virginia Botkin was because I didn't know who I was going to study with.
Hmm.
I was just going there because I didn't seek out the teacher like I always encourage people to do now. I just
Right, right,
say,
right.
just go to the school. And so when I first got there, there was I sang in the cattle call auditions and Virginia Zayani, and she was like, "Who are you studying with?" And I said, "I don't know, but I'm supposed to be looking for Virginia Botkin." She was like, "You should study with me." And I said, "Well, okay." So I got in connection with Virginia Botkin just to say hi, and I wasn't even sure who I should study with, but she
Yeah.
assumed that I was going to study with her, and I was like, well, let's study with her. I wasn't even that particular at that point. I was just like, let's study with Virginia Botkin. I studied with her
Sure.
for about 2 years, and then she had a bad fall, and then she ended up leaving IU. And so at
Hmm.
the time when I was at IU, I was dating a soprano in Miss Kukuro's studio. And when it was announced that Miss Botkin was leaving, I get a message from a couple students of Miss Kukuro's, and they're like, Miss Kukuro would like to talk to you. And so Miss Kukuro, she had always been nice to me, and she said, I really think I could do some good things for your voice. And so we began to talk, and then that's how I went over to Miss Kukuro. And so from that time to now, she is my voice teacher.
So how would you summarize technically kind of the things where you like what you were doing but what you didn't quite understand? And you can go as far back as Youngstown State or at Anderson, but technically what were you doing that you didn't quite understand that you were struggling with, and then how that progressed, and what those different individual teachers sort of helped you find along the way.
Well, I think all of my teachers have helped me. I mean, I think I'm fortunate in that sense. None of them harmed me. I can say
Good.
that.
That's
But
awesome.
I mean, that's a big thing right there. But none of them really did me any ill. Um, David Starkey, I think he was good for me. Just give me the basic foundation of singing. You have to use your whole body. You have to use your breath. You have to sing, without tension and stuff like that. And so I think I got that from him. I was just getting going with him. And then Fritz Robertson was my next teacher, and he talked about how resilient the voice is, but also how fragile the voice is. And
Yeah.
even the type of singer I am, a bel canto singer, I think all of them recognize that I had, I don't want to say a super unique sound for it, but people will hear my color of my sound and say it's a little bit darker for that type of music. Not that it's bigger or more heroic, but the sound of it in itself is a little bit different than the more nasal
Sure.
Rossini type tenor. And I'm not
Sure.
knocking nasality in those, singers. It was just my vocal production was what it was. And so he was
Well,
just,
as one of our colleagues or one of our professors at IU, the famous quote that I like to use: "You gotta have nose in your sound, but you don't want to have your sound in your nose." Mr. Giorgio Tozzi.
that guy. I love Mr. Totsi. Oh my
Oh, he
God.
was great.
That guy used to tell some incredible jokes too. But
Yes.
exactly, and so he was really, you know, I thought he was really good about never, he used to say to me, never manufacture your sound. Never
That's
try
incredible.
to,
And we're just talking about your undergraduate voice
yeah,
teachers at this point.
yeah.
I mean, that's incredible that you were already with somebody who talked to you about full body singing and that the voice is
Hmm.
not just from here up,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
also somebody who helped you understand how delicate the voice can be and how to never, like you just said, manufacture the tone. That's incredible.
Exactly. And so, yeah, he gave me that. And so I remember being there. He was a very good technical teacher, and he's retiring next year. But I remember he worked with all of his students that way, that he made sure that everybody was trying to sing as natural as possible and not try to,
Right.
uh, and even, he was like cautioning me. He was like, don't go to IU and become this singer, He was like, try to keep it, if you want to call it, keep it slim, keep it
Hmm.
lined up, and make sure you never push your voice out of line. I
Yeah.
was like, okay. And so that was good. And then I went to Virginia Botkin, and she talked about, I mean, she talked a lot about the body. She would do this with her ribs and everything to really make sure that your body was the motor underneath your sound. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah.
That you felt that you were always connected. You had your feet, connected or planted to the floor when you sang. And I remember specifically she was telling me, when you go for high notes, don't go on your tippy toes. Always feel like you're going the opposite direction when you're going for your high.
Sure.
And so that, and then Miss Kukuro was kind of like, I learned a lot from her, and just she talked about breath, she talked about support, she talked about freedom of tension. She used pretty simple illustrations about like really singing on your breath. That was one of the things she said. You sing on your breath. Your breath should be like a conveyor belt going away from you. When you sing, it's outward. And it should be like a bird that you let fly. And it's this way, never holding the bird in, but that your voice, whatever type of voice, it can reach the backseat of any theater you're in. So all of them have helped me in a way that, we all have our natural things that we go to. I used to have a voice that went back. It was kind of like back, and she was just like, you have to bring the voice forward. And one of my teachers, I can't remember who it was, said that Pavarotti, his voice was so forward that he could look at it. And so when you think that, so
That's
I'm
great.
like Pavarotti. One of the things I'm always thinking, if I'm thinking on the outtake, it's just like my voice is not nasal, but it's masky and it's forward.
Right, right. That's fantastic. I mean, again, it's rare. I mean, I talked a little bit about it in the first couple of episodes of this Under the Hood show, that I was very, very fortunate that I've had 4 teachers as well, and none of them hurt me, And I feel like we gain bits and kernels of knowledge along the way, and sometimes we're not even ready for them, But as we grow as humans, and as we grow as artists and as musicians and singers, we start to be able to piece those different things together and establish for ourselves this technique that we sing with. And it's so incredibly important for people to understand that as a singer, you never really can listen to yourself. It's always important to have that other set of ears that you can, trust and rely on to give you honest feedback. Because without that, we're just sort of shooting in the dark, And as I'm sure you're aware, there are not a shortage of people who would like to give their opinion on what you need to be doing, or where you should be, or what rep you should be singing. So yeah, it's important to create that team who you can really trust. And I think it starts certainly with the voice teacher. So after you started singing professionally, and I mean, from my memory, I remember you being in the Seattle Opera Young Artist Program, and then it was like, oh, Larry's going to make his La Scala debut as Almaviva. It's like, what? Because that's not the norm. I mean, that's granted, we don't always get standing ovations at our first public performance, but that was like, oh, okay. Now I also have to say, while we were at IU together, I will never forget listening to the live broadcast, or I guess it was a week late, but whatever it was. It was the broadcast of the Met competition when you won. And we were all at my place. There were a bunch of us. I think maybe you were even there, but we were listening to it. And in the first half, you sang Languir from Italiana. And on the second half, you sang Amaze Me. So the thing that I just absolutely love about your singing is what you're talking about in your technical approach, that it's very free, it's forward, but it's not nasal. The clarity is so incredibly prevalent. The legato within the coloratura, and I think for me that's like the number one thing. It's like you hear a lot of people that might sing coloratura, but it's more that shotgun style. The legato that you're able to maintain when you sing coloratura is truly inspiring. After I heard you sing that Languir, I was literally like, is there a baritone aria that would be kind of like that? I think I started looking at the Come Onape from Don Dini. I was like, well, that's got 3 different sections in it, and it kind of moves. I just want to sing like Larry one day. So
yeah, right.
But
hilarious.
But seriously though, once you started getting out there, well, first tell your story on how you went from like Seattle Opera to La Scala in like overnight.
That's hilarious. Well, it's interesting because I had done the Met auditions when I was at IU twice.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I did it. So I was at IU for 5 years, 4.5 years, actually. No, 4 years. Sorry. Because I took a couple semesters off to do like young artist programs and stuff like that. But I had won the encouragement award when I was 23.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had won the encouragement award when I was 25. And then, I had a couple people, they were like, just keep at it. You'll do one day, you'll be okay. I was like, okay.
Right.
And at that time, there were other tenors, my same age or younger than me at 21. They were winning the whole Met audition and going to the
Mm,
Metropolitan Opera studio and stuff. And I was like, well, everybody has a different path. But what
sure.
happened is I was about to I had gone to Opera Theater St. Louis and I met Stephen Lord, who was the person who gave me my first job in opera. And he was just like, he told me, he was like, you know what, kid, you're gonna make a big career like Rockwell Blake did. He was like, just get ready for it. And this is before anything happened. He was like,
Wow.
you're gonna have a big career like Rockwell Blake. And Rockwell Blake, I was like, that was, an idol. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Sure.
that someone would say that about me. Oh crap.
Right.
So I was finishing IU, or no, I had gone to Opera Theater St. Louis. And so one day, um, I get a call from this guy named Dean Williamson. He was like, I know you're about to end IU. What are you going to do next year? And I was like, I don't know exactly. I'm trying to figure it out. He said, well, Stephen Lord has spoken really highly of you. Would you like to come send your materials to Seattle Opera? Because we had a tenor, my friend, his name is Mark Calvert, who was
Hmm.
supposed to go, but he decided to stay in Pittsburgh Opera. So they
Okay.
needed a tenor for Ottavio. And then Stephen Lord was like, I know exactly the guy. Get this guy, Larry Brownlee. And so I was like, send him my materials. And then they were like, we take you. So I went to Seattle that next year. And this is when I was still at IU, actually, because I had one more semester to go. I took one
Right.
semester off because Seattle was only half of the year. It was only in the fall, 10 weeks.
That's right. That's right.
It was only 10 weeks. And so what happened is by going to Seattle, I got a chance to do the Met auditions up there.
Hmm.
So I did the districts there in Seattle and I won it. And then I got a chance to do the regional ones in the Northwest one. And then I won that. Then I got a chance to go to New York.
Right.
So having been in the Western District, I guess I don't know, not competing against the people in the Eastern District, but there's incredibly talented people from the Western one. But it was just the timing that seemed to work better at that time.
Sure.
So I go there, win the Western District and regionals, then I end up going to New York. And so when I go to New York, I go and do the competition. And so at that time, they had, everybody's the winner, but they had one award that was named for the top winner. So I was fortunate enough to win that top award for the Met auditions in 2001.
Hmm.
Okay. So that was my first year at Seattle. So I won the Met auditions then. And after that audition, there was a guy who was in the audience and he came up to me. His name was Robert Mershak. And he was like, I don't know who you are, but I want to work with you. He was like, people will tell you you're too short and black. He was like, but I don't believe that. You should be singing everywhere in the world. And I want to work for you. I will work hard for you. I will promote you. I mean, he was so excited about it. I was like,
Wow.
wow, okay. No agent had really ever come after me before,
Now, at
but
this
I was
point in
like,
time, was Robert? So Robert Mearshak is an artist manager, and
Robert,
I know that he had a boutique agency, or still does, Mearshak Artists. At that point in time, was he with that, or was he with a bigger group? Or
no, at that time he was with Herbert Barrett Management.
oh, okay, yeah,
He was
yeah,
with Herbert Barrett Management. And so he came and he was like really excited. And I had a few more days in New York after I won the competition, because at that time, the day after, you got a chance to record for A&E,
hmm,
A&E, and they used to broadcast that. So when
sure,
I was like, this guy is really excited about me. And I didn't say yes to him that day, but he kept in touch with me while I was still in New York. And so I had a couple more days there. He calls me up the day I'm supposed to leave. He was like, hey, do you want to sing for Virginia Opera? I was like, sure, why not? Why not? He said they're
right,
looking for an Alma Viva. So I'm leaving that night, but I sing for them that day. I sing and it goes, I guess, relatively well. And after I get done with the audition, they leave out of the room. They're like, wow, you sang it better than anybody else today. And so Robert was like, oh man, so great. And so at that moment, I was like, okay, I'm going to sign with Robert Mershak. And so he was still with Herbert Barrett. And then I was done for that time at Seattle Opera. But that next fall, I then go back to Seattle Opera, and I'm a part of the program for the second year. But in the
hmm,
meantime, and I know I'm talking a lot, but in the meantime, I was given the opportunity to go to the Lyric Opera of Chicago program, and I called Spake Jenkins and I was like, "Look, Lyric Opera offered me the program to come next year instead of Seattle," and he was just like, "Don't." come back to Seattle and I'll take care of you. I'll hook you up. And so I ended up not going to Lyric Opera Chicago, but I go back to Seattle Opera for a second year. And that's when I was in Seattle Opera in the green room, and Robert Mershak calls me and he said, "Are you sitting down?" And I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Somebody in Italy wants to hear you." And I'm like, "Yeah, right." He said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Yes." He said, "La Scala wants to hear you." And I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I sent the tape. That was the finals of the Met, and they are interested in hearing you sing for them. Can you get over there?" So I scraped up the money to get there, and I went there and sang for them, and they hired me on the spot. And so that was the
Wow.
whole thing with La Scala. I got hired in 2001.
Right.
I
Right.
won the Met auditions in 2001, and I got hired for La Scala in 2001.
That's amazing. I mean,
It's just
it's
crazy.
incredible.
Yeah.
And, oftentimes I think people, they assume that, first of all, I mean, I think anyone who is going to have a career as a singer has to be gifted, with the instrument in order to do so. But oftentimes people, I think, assume that because you might have incredible success that, oh, you just, it just everything just happens so easily for you, without realizing the amount of work that you do. And I know you, and I know how much you are incredibly disciplined in your practice and in the variety. I mean, if people don't already understand this about you, you're very competitive, and you're very in the variety of different venues that you pursue, whether it's ping pong or tennis or cycling, I'm sure. But can you talk a little bit about, well, two things. I mean, I think we'd all be interested in knowing, now as a seasoned performer in this repertoire, what are, if there are any, what are some of the things by singing so often and specifically in this repertoire did you begin to notice or see happening technically, vocally, that you needed to keep in line, keep in check? And then, if so, or if not, what are some of the exercises and some of the things that you do to make certain that your voice does stay as fresh and as agile as the repertoire that you sing requires?
I have to say, one of them, an important part of my development was some of the coaches that I worked with at IU. And I'm serious, both Gary Arvin and Mark Phelps were extremely helpful for me. And I remember they told me, Mark Phelps had a poster on the side of his wall. He said, "You should look like this when you sing and not, like this." And so he's like,
Right.
"Sing, be graceful, be artistic, be musical, but don't let your voice overtake your body. You be in control of your voice always." And then
Yeah.
Gary Arvin was like, "Look, you have to dot the I's and cross the T's." He was like, "The details is the difference is in the details." And so I used to take that and try to incorporate with everything technical that I was doing. So I was taking all the details of what the two of them were saying from musical and the musical standpoint, and then I was applying the technical aspects of that with my teacher at the same time. And it just wasn't enough that you could sing and survive Rossini. It was a difference between
Yeah.
being able to just get through it.
Right.
You need to
Right.
have a certain mastery of it. And so I was like, okay. And interestingly enough, when I started to whittle down my list, because it was very known that you have to have one German, one French, one this, one that. And so some
Sure.
of these are like fluff pieces. And then I think it was Gary Arvin was like, "Look, unless it's specific, only offer bel canto, and it can be two composers." I was like, okay, I think I had Rossini and Donizetti, and that's all I offered: the Art of the Regiment and Rossini stuff, and maybe Don
Mm-hmm.
Pasquale. And it was
Mm-hmm.
clear what type of singer I was saying that I was. And so
Right.
I was very locked into that because I was narrowing down who I was saying that I was, because I didn't want to be, as my teacher talked before about being in factories, I didn't want to be compared with the whole world. I wanted to be in a very specific lane that people looking for Rossini bel canto singers would come looking for me. So one of
Right.
the things you asked me about, like technically and vocally, some of the exercises, it was always about like singing technically sound, singing simple. My teacher Kukuro said that singing is an extension of speaking. It's not like going out on the rail yard and hitting hammers. It's like on the breath, physicality, relaxation, and just making sure that she would talk about not singing too fat in the middle, being able to
Hmm.
access your top, and so the exercises that I would do would be pretty much in that vein. And I have over here somewhere, I have a notebook that Miss Kukuro would say to me. She said, if you can sing all of these exercises, you don't need to come see me. So from time to time, I look at that and just to make sure can sing all the way, all the exercises the way she intended they be sung. And that has
Yeah.
always kept me lined up. She would talk about
Yeah.
things like timbre matching. It would talk about, um, I mean, she has many different names from, the teachers that she studied with. Most importantly, this guy named Stark that has a long
Yeah.
legacy of great teachers and singers. And so that's what it was. My exercises were simple and nothing too, it was really this extension of singing naturally more than anything else and support it.
That's incredible. I mean, so you haven't really experienced a period of time in your professional career where you had to take a second and be like, wait a minute, what in the world is going on right now? I'm trying to do too much, and therefore I'm doing something technically. Like, what the heck am I doing? I need to get back. Like, because of the foundations that you were given, everything has always sort of been specific and clear enough to you as a singer that you knew what what pegs fit into what holes, and how to if something were going awry, you knew the exercise to sort of focus on to get it back on track.
That's right. And I think any good teacher should teach you how to teach yourself.
Absolutely, I agree
And
with that
I think we
100%.
are a student, but I think they should give you the tools. If you're going to go off, if they're going to send you off into the world of music, they should equip you with the things that you can get yourself out of trouble. Have I had some vocal crises? Yeah. And I actually have to go back from time to time to see my teacher. Now that we have, what do you want to call it? Social media, the Met broadcast, or other things. My teacher has
Sure.
heard me before, and she would give me a text message and say, remember to do this, or remember not to do that. And so, in that
Right, right.
sense, I can keep myself out of harm's way. And even if it's early in the run, I'm always trying to be keen to what's happening so that I can try to correct it and do it better. But if I'm having problems, I'll look in this notebook and I'll say, why am I having problems? That's why. Why am I
Mhm.
doing, why am
What
I
is your tendency? Like, what would be a problem that you've run into in the past where you have to kind of go back?
well, the thing is, it's like the a lot of tenors, the high they work on, but they sometimes the lower and lower middle is
Hmm.
not worked out. And when it begins to you try to sound too heroic sometimes in the lower middle,
Hmm.
that it
Hmm.
becomes something that you can't access the top. I talk about that all the time. And so if you're singing not she talks about singing north and south and not east and west, like many
Yep.
teachers do. Many teachers do. But for me, it's just one of these things that if I begin to enjoy my middle too much,
Hmm.
I always had that easy top, but if I enjoy my middle, I don't getting through the passaggio becomes a little bit more difficult. And then for me, it's just like, okay, I need to slim it down because she believes that the voice should be one from top to bottom and not sound like you have five different voices. And so
Agreed.
um, she talks about tongue tension, she talks about placement and stuff like that too. And so these are the things, these are my Achilles heels to make sure that it never falls back, but to make sure that it is somewhat masky and forward.
Right. Right. Do you ever think about, I mean, people call it different types of things, aggiustamento or vowel modification,
Hmm.
but as you sing through your passaggio and get above it, do you think about purposefully adjusting the vowel so that you can allow for a different type of resonance?
Well, Miss Kukuro, she says, sing the best vowel, and
The
she's
best
famous
vowel.
for, she's famous for saying, who cares what the word is up there? Sing the best vowel on that note,
Right.
and so she talks about timbre matching.
Yeah.
So it's all lined up instead of a e i o u I o. No,
Right. Right.
it's all uniform and in a certain place, and so you don't have to, adjust too much in a certain zone. And then when you get up top, I think all of us have a certain vowel that works best in our voice for whatever our own
Sure.
physical makeup is. And so she's gonna want you to find that best vowel even if the word is a me, it may end up being a may up top if may
Sure.
really sounds well. So there is some
Right.
adjusting that happens to make sure that your voice is never encumbered and it can ring. The resonators, all those things that are working, to do this for your voice are in place, and so the voice can travel and it has no sign at all of tension.
So on the high F in Ipuritani, what word is that, and what vowel do you sing on that?
Of like un solista Paul shots up. That's a Paul, which is not a bad vowel for me up there.
Sure,
And so what I
sure.
usually do is wear my underwear two sizes small,
There you
and
go. Don't
and I have
ever negate
and
the
I
idea of yeah.
and I have someone like crash down on my toe, big toe, right before I sing
Sure.
it, so I can reach
Right
it.
then, yeah. Excellent, excellent. Well, I can't thank you enough for being with us and for kicking off Tenor Month, as I've like to call it, here in August. And looking ahead, I think we're all kind of in a place right now, performance wise, where we're looking for things to open up when it's safe to do so. Do you have some silver linings of what experiences you've been able to have? I mean, obviously, I'd be silly to not mention your show, the Sit Down with LB. A couple of us have turned to the interwebs to create some digital content. But what sort of silver linings have you had come out of this time where we find ourselves at home with our families when honestly that's not what our normal day-to-day lives look like?
Yeah, being with my family and making the most of this time that I have with my kids and my wife is definitely important. A lot of us say we won't get this time again, not
Yeah,
anytime in the near future. And so to enjoy these moments now. And so as you talked about me being, doing the show, the Sit Down with LB and other endeavors, to be active because I'm just a person. Some people may call me a busybody, but I'm just energetic and I just have stuff that I want to do. So I'm just trying to put positive stuff out there in the atmosphere. I'm working on music so that when COVID is done, that we can hit the ground running.
yeah,
Just trying to be productive in that way. So I'm just thankful for the time that I have to wake up and see my kids and my wife every day. And so just making the most of this opportunity now.
that's awesome. Well, I maybe someday there'll be an opera where there's a Rossini tenor and a Verdi baritone that can sing together, because I would love that opportunity. But tell you what, man, it's great.
Paul staff.
Oh yes, there you go. Let's do it. Sign us up, man.
I've I've never done Fenton, but who knows? Maybe one day.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. Well, we'll put it out there into the universe. We'll see what happens. But man, it was great to chat with you. Thanks so much for your time, and
Anytime,
go be
anytime.
with your kids, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome.
All
Thanks
right.
for having
Thanks
me.
everybody for tuning in.